Introduction. The curse of virtue in a crooked world. Imagine you're handed absolute power, a throne, a crown, the loyalty of an army, and the fate of an entire nation in your grasp. Your people cry out for justice, for equality, for mercy. You want to be good, fair, moral, but what if being good is the quickest path to your destruction? What if every act of kindness chips away at your control? Every generous policy weakens your hold. Every time you forgive, you invite betrayal. Welcome to the mind of Niccolò Machiavelli. Far from the idealist thinkers of his time, Machiavelli stood like a shadowy figure among dreamers. Where Plato spoke of the philosopher king, and Confucius emphasized moral duty, Machiavelli offered a different warning. The ruler who focuses on doing good may forget that he rules in doing so. He risks losing everything. His writings were not guides for saints, but blueprints for survivors. They were written not in ivory towers, but amid the collapsing politics of Renaissance Italy, where virtue was often a luxury few rulers could afford. In The Prince, Machiavelli gave rulers one of his most brutal teachings: do not waste time being good unless it serves your power. And if you must choose between being feared or loved, choose fear. Always fear. But why? Was Machiavelli simply evil, cynical, or was he a realist who saw through the romantic illusions of political philosophy? What exactly does it mean to do not do good, or you will forget that you rule? In this video, we'll dive into the philosophical heart of Machiavelli's most chilling lesson. We'll look at how morality, when unchecked, becomes a weakness, how rulers risk their authority when they lose the edge of fear, and how even in our modern age, this ancient warning still echoes behind the speeches of presidents, the calculations of CEOs, and the quiet decisions of those who lead from the shadows. Let's begin by understanding the brutal political world that Machiavelli was writing in. Section 1. Renaissance Italy, a playground of treachery. Machiavelli did not write from the calm shelter of philosophical detachment or the ivory tower of academia. His words were forged in the fire of experience. Amid the brutal and unforgiving chaos that was Renaissance Italy, a land, not of one nation but of many squabbling, scheming city-states, each with its own ambitions, betrayals, and bloody secrets. Florence, his beloved and treacherous home. Milan, a city ruled by ruthless dukes. Venice, rich and cunning behind its waterways. And the Papal States, where popes plotted like kings and wielded swords, as well as scriptures. This was a political chessboard soaked in ambition, and stained with betrayal. Loyalty was a fiction. Trust was suicide. Treaties were scraps of paper torn apart as soon as they became inconvenient. Betrayals weren't shocking, they were expected, like the sunrise. Alliances shifted faster than the seasons. Broken in the dead of night with the whisper of a dagger, or the bribe of a handful of gold. The Church itself, once seen as the guardian of morality, was deeply enmeshed in corruption and scandal, its popes more interested in power and pleasure than piety. Assassinations were the language of diplomacy. Poison a tool of negotiation. Armies were not patriots, they were mercenaries. Soldiers of fortune whose loyalty could be bought and sold like grain in the market. Men who would switch sides mid-battle, if a better offer came. Machiavelli saw it all. He lived not in theory, but in survival. As a diplomat, he negotiated with snakes and smiled at murderers. He watched virtuous men fall toppled, not by evil, but by naivete. Rulers who held fast to ideals, mercy, honesty, justice became corpses, or exiles. Meanwhile, their ruthless rivals thrived, unconcerned with right and wrong, focused only on power and its preservation. And so, Machiavelli's hard, cold wisdom was born. His famed endorsement of cruelty was not born of sadism or madness. It was the bitter fruit of experience, the realization that in a world of wolves, sheep are devoured. Cruelty, in his view, was a tool sharp, dangerous, but necessary. A means of survival, not pleasure. Mercy and kindness were luxuries rulers could not afford, not if they wished to keep their thrones or their heads. To rule Florence, or any other city in this pit of serpents, a leader could not afford the illusion of goodness. He needed to be feared more than loved, unpredictable rather than honorable. For Machiavelli, the grim truth was clear: in an age of endless treachery, the prince who clung to moral purity would be the first to fall. Section 2. Why virtue is a trap. Virtù vs. morality. In the grand tradition of philosophy, virtues in Latin had always meant something noble: courage, justice, honesty, temperance. It was the soul's armor, the mark of a good man. the path to both personal and political greatness. But Machiavelli, ever the realist, shattered this ancient mirror and reassembled its pieces into something darker and sharper. To him, the true mark of a successful ruler was virtue, a word he deliberately redefined. No longer was it about goodness or moral excellence. Instead, virtù meant force of will, strength of character, cunning intelligence, adaptability, ruthlessness when needed, patience when profitable. It was the rare and dangerous ability to seize fortune by the throat and bend it to one's will. Why? Because conventional morality, Machiavelli insisted, was not a blessing, but a trap, a velvet snare that captured and destroyed rulers foolish enough to obey it. A prince who tries to be good in the traditional sense, kind, forgiving, generous, merciful, risks becoming predictable. Predictability is a death sentence in politics. Enemies know how you will act. Rivals can guess your moves. Subjects learn to manipulate your compassion, to take advantage of your generosity, to exploit your honesty. According to Machiavelli, the world does not reward goodness, it punishes it. Be generous, and you create endless expectation. Your subjects, your allies, your soldiers, they will not be grateful. They will be greedy. The more you give, the more they demand, until you are drained and despised for not giving even more. Be merciful, and you invite rebellion. Criminals, conspirators, traitors, they do not fear the ruler who forgives. They laugh at him, plot against him, confident that his mercy will save them again. Only fear prevents treachery. Only harsh punishment secures loyalty. Be honest, and you become a fool. Lies are the language of politics. Deceit, its grammar. Speak the truth, and it will be twisted against you, your words used as weapons by cleverer, crueler men. The honest ruler is the naked man in a room of armored knights. Machiavelli's prince must not abandon virtue entirely, but he must reshape it. His virtù is flexible, flowing, sharp like water or steel. He must know when to be merciful and when to be brutal. When to speak truth and when to deceive. When to give and when to take without pity. In this way, morality blinds the ruler to his true duty. Not to be loved, but to govern. Not to win praise, but to keep power. A ruler is not judged by heaven's standards, but by the cold, hard measure of survival. History remembers the victorious, not the virtuous. And so, in Machiavelli's ruthless world, the prince who clings to goodness loses both power and life. But the prince who embraces virtù, cunning, strength, ruthlessness writes his own destiny. Section 3. Fear over love, the most misunderstood advice. Of all the words Machiavelli ever wrote, none have sparked more debate, confusion, and controversy than his famous warning. It is much safer to be feared than loved. At first glance, these words paint the picture of a cold, ruthless leader, a tyrant, who rules with an iron fist and delights in cruelty. But this shallow reading misses the depth of Machiavelli's real meaning, and the profound truth buried within. Machiavelli was not urging princes and rulers to become monsters. He was not celebrating sadism or bloodlust. He wasn't saying that fear should be a ruler's only tool, or that love is worthless. What he was offering was a hard lesson from the harsh world of politics, a world he knew all too well, from personal experience. Fear, he argues, is reliable. Fear establishes limits. Fear draws invisible lines that subjects dare not cross. Love, on the other hand, is like the wind, warm and pleasant when the skies are clear, but fleeting and unreliable when storms gather. A ruler who depends solely on being loved will find that love disappears the moment things go wrong, the instant he makes a mistake, shows weakness, or becomes vulnerable. Why? Because love is conditional. People's affections are tied to their own interests, their own comfort, their own survival. Loyalty born of love can evaporate in the face of fear, greed, or desperation. A scandal, a rumor, a political disaster, any of these can break the fragile bond of affection that holds a people to their leader. But fear lasts. Fear is constant. Fear motivates, even when admiration fails. A leader who is feared may not be adored, but he will be abandoned by those who secretly despise him. Fear keeps armies loyal, nobles cautious, and rivals hesitant. Yet Machiavelli makes a delicate and essential distinction that many forget. A wise ruler must always stop short of hatred. To be feared is power. To be hated is danger. Hatred breeds conspiracies. It creates enemies who will not rest until the ruler falls. It turns fear into rage and loyalty into betrayal. Thus, the Machiavellian ruler walks a narrow and dangerous path. He must rule through fear but never cross the line into cruelty for its own sake. Punishment must serve a purpose, not a personal whim. Discipline must be strategic, not sadistic. The execution of an enemy, the humiliation of a rival, the exile of a traitor, all must be done not for pleasure, but for stability, control, and the preservation of power. This is the genius of Machiavelli's most misunderstood advice. It is not a call for brutality. It is a call for wisdom. Rule with fear but rule with reason. Rule with strength, but never with savagery. The prince who masters this balance can survive where others fall. Section 4. Real-world reflections. Machiavelli today. 5 centuries have passed since Machiavelli's quill scratched these thoughts onto parchment in Florence. And yet, his ghost lingers in the corridors of modern power, whispering to presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, generals, and kings. No leader today openly claims to be Machiavellian. No statesman proudly quotes the prince on television. And yet, Machiavelli's fingerprints are everywhere. Look at politics. How often do we see leaders manufacturing crises to tighten their grip on power? They declare emergencies, economic, military, social, not always, because they must, but because fear gives them control. Fear rallies the population. Fear silences dissent. Fear makes the unacceptable seem necessary. Listen to the speeches of politicians who promise safety over freedom, order over justice. Watch how they stoke anxiety about crime, about foreign threats, about economic collapse, because a fearful public is a manageable public. This is pure Machiavelli. Better to be feared than loved, and better still, if the fear is wrapped in the language of protection. Turn to business. The world's wealthiest corporations speak the language of ethics, sustainability, and corporate responsibility. Their glossy reports are filled with words like diversity, community, and values. And yet behind the curtain, the decisions are often cold and brutal. Mass layoffs, factory closures, ruthless cost-cutting, all justified as saving the company or ensuring future growth. A Machiavellian mind would nod in approval. Survival first, image second. In war, the lessons are even clearer. Preemptive strikes, drone assassinations, secret operations, all carried out in the name of national security, often at the cost of justice or morality. The reasoning is familiar. Better to kill a potential threat now than face disaster later. Better to commit a small wrong today than suffer a great evil tomorrow. This is not idealism. This is calculation, the heart of Machiavellian strategy. Even diplomacy dances to this ancient tune. Treaties are signed with smiling faces and firm handshakes, while knives are hidden behind backs. Allies are betrayed when the price is right. Promises are broken when convenience demands it. Betrayal, Machiavelli reminds us, is not failure. Sometimes it is victory. And what of the ordinary person? Machiavelli's shadow falls here, too. In workplaces, in schools, in families, people navigate power, not with pure honesty, but with careful calculation. When to speak, when to remain silent, when to flatter, when to threaten. The Machiavellian instinct is human instinct, dressed in the modern clothes of office life and social media. This is the uncomfortable truth. Machiavelli did not invent these rules, he merely revealed them. He did not make the world cruel. He simply showed that cruelty, when used with skill, can rule the world. Perhaps this is why the prince remains timeless. Because Machiavelli understood something that many still refuse to accept. Doing good can be dangerous. Doing what works can be ugly. And survival, whether of a leader, a nation, or an empire, may depend not on morality, but on mastery of fear, deception, and power. And in that dark wisdom, his words still live. Section 5. The inner battle, the ruler versus the human. Machiavelli was not blind to the silent war that every leader fights not on the battlefield, but within their own soul. He understood something that few advisors, philosophers, or thinkers dared to admit openly, that behind every crown sits a human heart. And that heart, no matter how encased in armor, or shrouded in ceremony, longs for the same things all people do: love, trust, acceptance, and the warm glow of moral approval. But these longings, Machiavelli warned, are dangerous luxuries for those who hold power. A ruler cannot afford the comforts of ordinary humanity. He cannot afford to lead like a friend, feel like a father, or forgive like a brother. His duty demands something colder, something sharper, mind-trained, not in kindness, but in calculation. The prince must not live as a man, but as a symbol, as a figure carefully shaped and polished to reflect what the people wish to see: strength, confidence, wisdom, virtue. And yet behind this gleaming mask, the true face remains hidden, alert, cautious, always measuring risk and reward. For Machiavelli, this mask is not a tool of deception. It is a shield of survival. To lead is not simply to govern, but to perform a constant balancing act between what must be shown and what must be done. A prince must appear gentle, merciful, just, but he must act, when needed, with precision and cruelty, like a surgeon cutting away rot to save the whole body. He must wield power, not with rage or pleasure, but with cold necessity. Does this make him a monster? No, it makes him honest about the terrible cost of leadership. In the dark chambers of decision, when the throne room is empty, and the echoes of the court have faded, the prince may wonder if he has lost something precious, the warmth of the human heart. But Machiavelli would whisper, "Remember why you lead. Remember what happens if you forget." The world is not kind to the naive ruler. Mercy to the wrong man can destroy the lives of thousands. Kindness to the enemy can doom the state. Sentimentality is the poison of power. And so the prince bears this burden, walking a lonely path. For who can understand the weight he carries? The people see only the smiling face, the outstretched hand. They cannot see the sleepless nights, the impossible choices, the quiet despair of knowing that to rule well is to sacrifice one's soul, piece by piece. This is the inner battle. Not the sword and shield, but the heart against the mind, the man against the prince. And in Machiavelli's harsh wisdom, the prince must always win, even at the cost of the man. Section 6. Conclusion, a warning, not a manifesto. It is easy, so very easy, to despise Machiavelli, to dismiss him as a dark cynic, a preacher of cruelty, a man who robbed politics of its soul. His words seem cold, merciless, joyless, as if he wished to turn rulers into beasts and kingdoms into machines. But this is a shallow reading, and dangerous. For Machiavelli was not urging rulers to abandon virtue, but to understand reality. His message was not, "Be evil," it was, "Be awake." Do not dream in a world that devours dreamers. Do not expect fairness where none exists. Do not imagine that goodness alone will save you, or that kindness will protect your throne. These things are beautiful, but beauty does not survive the knife. His harshest warnings are not prescriptions for wickedness, they are shields against ruin. When he writes, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both," he is not telling rulers to choose terror but to never gamble their fate on affection alone. Love fades, fear endures. This is not cruelty, this is survival. And when he warns, "Do not do good if it causes you to forget that you rule," he is whispering a brutal truth. Goodness that costs your power is a betrayal not of yourself, but of the people, the state, the future. A dead prince cannot protect his kingdom. A weak ruler invites chaos, and in chaos, far greater evils are born. In this light, Machiavelli's coldness becomes a strange form of mercy. He asks rulers to carry the darkness, so that the people may live in peace. To suffer the loneliness of power, so that others may enjoy safety. To make the terrible decisions no ordinary man would bear, so that the state endures. His book, The Prince, is not a guide for tyrants. It is a warning for leaders. A harsh, bitter medicine meant to keep rulers awake, alive, and aware in a world where not everyone plays fair. And so the final question remains, hanging in the air like a blade poised to fall. If power were yours, would you risk it all to be good? Would you cling to virtue, even as the world turned against you? Or would you do what is necessary, not for your sake, but for the sake of those who depend on you? To rule is not to be free. It is to be chained to duty. To sacrifice your peace so that others may have theirs. To burn in silence, while the world sleeps safe. That is Machiavelli's truth. Not cruelty, not evil, but the terrible price of keeping order in a disordered world.